Thank you for making the time this afternoon to join our mid-sprint call webinar. So as Fergus just said, this is the UKRI Trusted in Connected Data and Analytics Research Environments. And I'm going to call it Day UK as we go through the webinar, because the other piece is a bit of a mouthful. So what I'm going to do today is first, I want to actually go through just a quick overview of the broader Day UK programme. I know many of you will have been on the previous launch webinar we held in July and the sprint launch call that we held a few weeks ago, but I know some are also new to the programme, so I want to go through the quick overview, and also it's a quick reminder of what we're trying to do with this programme. I'm then going to talk through the Sprint Exemplar Projects, what we're trying to do with the call as a reminder, and draw out some of the things that I think are key to being able to bring forward some excellent applications. I'm going to highlight some of the questions that we've already seen come through from the programme, because we've already run an FAQ and we'll be continuing to update that on a weekly basis. And I'm not going to go through every question we've received so far and the answers, but there's a few that I feel are pertinent to helping in a more general way with the applications. And the intent is we'll finish with plenty of time to handle your questions and handle discussion. As Fergus has already said, please put those questions in through the Q&A facility, and we'll be watching those as we go through. So don't wait until I finish. Feel free to dive in with those questions at any time. So what are we really trying to do with the Day UK programme? What is it that we're trying to answer? So we have been commissioned as HDR UK and ADR UK to really look at what it takes to build a national and secure interoperable data research environment to do research on sensitive data across disciplines in a flexible, efficient and sustainable way, and in a way that it very importantly retains and enhances public trust throughout. So this first phase of the programme that we're in now, and which runs through to the August of next year, is about understanding that requirement, having a dialogue with researchers, with technology providers and with the publics around what the expectations should be for that research and what the infrastructure should look like, and to design out of that an approach for the latter stages of the Day UK programme. So key to this is open dialogue and community co-design. We want to ensure that we have an effective infrastructure to do cross-domain research that spans across the different disciplines represented by UKRI, and that is designed by the community and that engages the public. And very importantly, this has been part of what we've been doing over the last few weeks with a landscape review we've been holding with interviews across many stakeholders. It's part of what we will be doing very shortly with a public engagement work, and it's the driving force behind the Sprint programme. So it's about understanding the requirements and testing some of those ideas out in practice. And there's some really key assumptions here. And some of these assumptions are really important as you work on developing your Sprint proposals. And I'm assuming, as this is a mid-call, that the majority of you are in here because you are building, developing, collaborating on Sprint proposals. Across each of the councils represented in UKRI, there is already great infrastructure. There's already great research going on. There are great use cases being explored. So we know we're not starting from scratch. We know from talking to people that there is a cross-council need, and a growing cross-council need to do this research, demonstrated amply over the last 18 months by the response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and also that we should be able to do this quicker and better and more effectively, which I think even comes through in some extent in the report that we've seen today. We know that technology is feasible, not All aspects of it have been tried out, but core elements of this have been tried and tested in certain areas and can be reused across different domains. But we need to try some of those out and do further development. But indeed, technology may not be at the heart of addressing this, which will be very important as we talk about the sprints in a few minutes. This is about governance, it's about ethics, it's about the use cases, it's about public involvement. And technology is important, but it may not be the only thing that we need to address effectively to really make success of this program. We know it needs to be ethically and legally feasible and trusted by the public. So what we do and how you develop your sprint proposals need to enhance that trust, need to involve the public, and we need to be able to explain and describe what we do in a way that is accessible to the public. And as I said, this is phase one. This phase runs from this year through to the August of 2022, where we'll be shaping the design for the subsequent phases. So what we're talking about with the projects and the more general work we're doing in phase one is time bounded. So as you develop out those proposals, they must fit within the timescales that we're outlining. So there will be a number of key outputs of phase one of the Day UK programme. We are working through a stakeholder engagement exercise, which has been going on now for a few weeks. We will shortly be sharing some of the initial outputs from that, because one of the things that is at the heart of doing this in a trustworthy way is for us to be transparent ourselves in sharing what we learn and getting your feedback on that. So keep a watch out on our website. This will be coming soon. We're driving through this first phase. This first phase is about listening and doing that community work and that co-design for a novel, sustainable national federated infrastructure. Though that will be a key element of coming out of the first phase, and that design will be informed by what we learn from the sprints and the use cases. And that's at the heart of today's webinar. So the sprints are about testing ideas. They're about taking the other elements of the program and looking at what is feasible to improve what we're doing around governance and ethics and public engagement, as well as testing out some of the technology elements. It might be about novel approaches, but it might also be about taking ideas that have worked in one research domain and saying, okay, this has worked in nuclear physics. Can it work in health? Can it work in administrative data? It's looking at how we can share best practice, as well as develop novel approaches, both in use cases, socio-technical areas, and the technology. So we are looking for applications through this sprint call that address at least one of the following areas. It's not necessary to address all three. Some applications may, but you've got to bring forward things that are challenging, that really move us forward in at least one of these areas. So it could be about driver use cases that really take the use case of data across Research Council areas. So this could be health and climate, it could be administrative data and health. So looking across the domains around sensitive data, which could be personally identifiable data or commercial data, and looking at those use cases. So it may be running new use cases, or it may be running a retrospective analysis on existing use cases to really derive the insights that we can get from those. It could be around technology demonstrators. There's a whole number of areas that may have been tested out, may be embryonic in federation, and this could be about identity management, it could be around privacy enhancing technologies, it could be about data virtualization, but it's around technology demonstrators that help inform the design of a future novel infrastructure that allows us to do that analytics across data across the councils. It could also be around the third area, which is around establishing best practice for information governance, ethics, standards, etc. And this could, I think, typically be looking at best practice from one domain, from one area of research, and seeing how that can be expanded and applied in different research areas. So we're looking for we're looking for applications across all of these areas. We're not valuing one above any other. So if you are bringing forward a technology demonstrator, that doesn't disadvantage you. If you're bringing forward a best practice application, that doesn't disadvantage you. We're expecting that the sprints will represent a portfolio spread across all of these domains. The funding for the projects will be from 0 up to 400K. So the top point will be 400K. There is no bottom floor on the funding. We will look to fund 10 projects with a total funding stream of £2 million. It is important as you look and shape these projects that you understand that these are there to inform the design of the subsequent phases of the DARE UK programme, and therefore projects need to complete within timescale. Extensions will not happen, including unfunded extensions. Projects must be complete for August 2022, and they must be ready to go in the January of 2022. They are fixed time, so make sure they're scoped and resourced appropriately. And this is a portfolio. So as we select the projects, we will select the projects based on a portfolio view as well as the excellence of the individual project, but also we will be looking for the project teams to collaborate together, to work together, to share together. So we're looking to inform the outputs that will go into the next phases of the UK programme, but we're also looking to share those publicly and across the project teams. So the details of what may be covered in the awards are now on the UKRI Opportunity Finder website. So I encourage you, before you work too many of the details in your application, to spend some time, read through those in detail. And if it's unclear, come back to us, ask questions. I'll include the details within the slides of where to send your questions to. So you can be looking at your staffing resources, consumables that are attributed, some level of research equipment, but that will be limited out. And also funding into the contributions and research costs from industry, providing those fit within the rules applicable to SMEs and larger industry. So look at the details on the UKRI website to make sure that budgets brought forward are appropriate. And obviously, hopefully stating the obvious, these are for new and novel work, so that it's not to cover costs that may have already been covered through other public or other sources of funding. So key dates, you are at the mid-sprint call webinar. Okay, hopefully that's where you intended to be. The next key date in your mind needs to be the 11th of November, 9 AM, the 11th of November. That is the close date for the applications. Okay, so you need those applications to be in the inbox for 9 AM on that day, so that we can go through them, triage them, and work out how many we have to move forwards. Once we have those, we will be going through a review process, which will conclude by the end of November. We will have a panel session, which tentatively is scheduled for the 29th of November. That will allow us to be rapidly able to move through here, contact the successful applicants, get through a contracting process to have the projects ready to launch on the 4th of January. As you shape your applications, do be clear that you are in a position to launch on that 4th of January. that you can meet the Sprint Exemplar dates to share information as we go through, and that you will be able to conclude your project with final reports and write-ups for the 31st of August. These are really important. This is a sprint, so we need to make sure that we have everything in place to do this at pace. So application process is up. You can find the details through the link. The slides will be sent out to everybody attending today. And you can go to the link, find out all the details there. As I've said, they need to be in to the addresses shown here for 9 a.m. on the 11th. The lead organization needs to be a recognized research organization. If you're unsure whether you meet those criteria, please do send in a question. We have had some questions already, which we've hopefully qualified. And also make sure that we are looking for the lead investigator on the project to have demonstrable experience of delivering at pace and to short projects. So again, think through and work through this. And to highlight something that's may not have come through in some of the discussions, but really important, is this program is being led on behalf of UKRI by HDR UK and ADR UK. We are, both organisations are firmly committed to promoting equality and diversity and broadening that equality and diversity in our technology and research communities. So we encourage you to reflect this within your applications. You can see on the UKRI site the details. So, but I have again included it within the slides today, so you can see the shape of what we're looking for. Hopefully this is not too onerous in terms of the scope of application that's required for these projects. So we, again, encourage you to do this, but please do make sure you stay within the bounds set here. For each of the calls that I've been involved in since joining HDR UK 3.5 years ago, I've seen really good potential applications come through that have gone way beyond the limits on the applications. This results in either applications getting truncated or excluded. So please read through it, check it, and check you're within the limits provided for each section. This is the reason for doing this, is to not make it too onerous as you develop your application, but also making sure this is done in a fair way across the various applicants. As I believe Fergus has already mentioned in the chat, we do have an FAQ running, which will be updated on a weekly basis. So if you have questions, send them through. We will respond by email, but we'll also, where appropriate, publish an anonymized version of question and answer for general use. Sometimes they're too specific to do that, but in general, we'll be able to publish an anonymized question and answer, and these will be made available on the Sprint Exemplar Projects page of the New Day UK website. If you've not yet visited our website, this is your opportunity. I would encourage you, go out there, visit our website. We will be sharing outputs, we'll be sharing news and events on the website. It is also where the FAQ is. And if you've got suggestions, please also send them through to us. We will be developing out the website as we go through the program as well. So what I'm going to quickly do now is there's quite a lot of questions come through, but I thought it was useful. If you want details, go to the FAQ, but I thought it's useful to just very quickly run through some of the questions that I feel are most pertinent to developing a really crisp application for this call. So there has been some discussion about what sensitive data is. And this could be data that's personally identifiable, as in it started as personally. It could be de-identified, pseudonymized, from various domains. So that's where a lot of this might come from, but it could, for example, it will also include data that has commercial sensitivity. So our view on sensitive data is fairly broad. So we've had questions around what are the lessons learned from similar past Sprint projects. So I think as you look at designing your project proposal, be ambitious. Look to address difficult problems, whether they're difficult problems of governance or different problems of technology, but also be realistic in what you can solve within the timescale of the sprint. There may be future opportunity, there may be things that might take 2 or 3 years, but this is an 8-month sprint, not a 2 or 3 year project. So be realistic, but be ambitious, but also be aware we will have made decisions on the projects at the end of November. We'll be looking to start at the beginning of January. So be aware of what you can get in place for a start of the project in January. There isn't a cap on the number of applications an institute can submit. If an institute wishes to submit one or many, that's entirely up to you. And we've had a few people ask about whether charities can be partners and funded through this call. Yes, absolutely. Charities can be funded, but it must fit in the scope of the call. So for details, please go, if this applies to you, please go to the UKRI Opportunity Finder entry and read through the details to make sure that what's being proposed is within scope. Applications don't need to cover all that will be relevant to all of the UKRI's councils. We're not looking, particularly as these sprints, we're not looking for these to solve everything. But there must be relevance beyond the single UKRI council. So this could be, for example, use cases that span more than one council. It could be reusing technologies or governance approaches from one council into another council area. So it must have relevance beyond one council. And likewise, we're not expecting all projects to address all 3 key areas for use cases. So if you're developing something that's based around a use case, you can target all 3 if you wish, if that's relevant, but or you target all 3 areas of use cases, governance, technology, if you wish, but you can just target one specific area. And as I said earlier, as you look at the scope of your project, be sure that you can have in place the data resources if you need them, the technology resources if you need them, or the staffing resources for a fast start on the 4th of January. So we're not mandating how you do that, but as we go through the assessment, we will be looking to have a high degree of confidence that all projects can be going at that point. For technology demonstrator projects, I'm a technologist. I like to see things running and working, code talks. So whilst if you had something that was purely around a specification and with a proposed delivery, that wouldn't exclude you, but something with a demonstrable output is going to have a stronger play in terms of really showing validity of the technology as we feed into later stages of the Day UK programme. It may be a challenge for some people to get data for use cases. We know that one of the challenges, certainly in the health data space, is the speed of which you can get through the approvals processes for health data. We rightly have very rigorous, strong governance in those areas. So the use of synthetic data for a project is entirely appropriate. It may be an opportunity to demonstrate that through a sprint and then show what would be done with real data in a more extensive program in the future. Patient, this came through as a patient, public and practitioner involvement. Let's just view it as a engagement of the publics. We don't do research on sensitive data without public trust. The moment we lose public trust, the moment we lose the confidence of the publics in the research we do, and that there is tangible benefit from them, and they understand what we're doing, the risks and the risks associated, we lose. So we will expect every project to demonstrate how it is working with the relevant publics, and that is how it's working with the publics, and how it's engaging and involving those publics within the project proposal. So be clear of how this sits within your proposals. It is the heart of how ADR UK works. It's the heart of how HDR UK works. So we expect it to be reflected throughout the program. There is no expectation of co-funding from industry. There isn't a matched funding approach with this particular proposal. And there is funding out to industrial partners, again, subject to the rules of the call. So if you are involving, or I know there's a number of people on today's calls from industry, please do make sure that you read the details from the UKRI site on what can and can't be funded from industry's perspective. We are aware there is a lot of other initiatives in this area. Some from within the health space, some from the sort of ESRC space, and more broadly. We're collaborating with those initiatives. And so if you are involving in areas that spread over into other initiatives that are already going on, please do reference those. It doesn't necessarily exclude an application. And we have representation in our review process from some of these other initiatives, for example, from ONS and NHSX. So we're collaborating very closely, and we would encourage projects that also reflect that collaboration. And finally, and I know looking at the registrations for today, this is not a health initiative. Whilst I'm a technologist from HDR UK, HDR UK and ADR UK are running this on behalf of UKRI. This is a UKRI initiative. So health projects are valid. A health improvement project may potentially be valid, but it does still need to hit all of the other elements of this in demonstrating cross-council capability, of improving best practices around governance, ethics, and public involvement, in bringing forward new technology demonstrators. So if a project stays within one council domain or in one area like health improvement and does not touch the other areas, it's not a project that this call is really a suitable vehicle for. But if it can move other aspects forward, perhaps it's drawing on work that's come on from outside of the health domain, it may potentially meet the strong potential meet for the needs of this call. So with that, I'm just going to hand over to Fergus in a minute to open up for the Q&A. We are mid-sprint. Hopefully you are well on your way to developing your applications. Please do continue to engage with us, ask questions. Take a quick look every week at our FAQ. We want to see great applications through on the 11th of November, and keep watching out on our website. And if you're not already signed up to receive updates, please go onto the online form and sign up. So with that, I'd like to thank you, and I'm going to hand back to Fergus to open us up for Q&A. Thank you, everybody.
Great, thanks, Jerry. So I think what we'll do now is Jerry and Hans-Erik basically will be our panelists here. But I think we'll open up the Q&A. You should be able to see the questions, Jerry, Hans-Erik, I believe. Let's just confirm that you can. Can you see the questions? And I basically say, take it away. And between the two of you, you can decide who should take what.
So shall I take the go for it? Yeah, I'm going to start because I probably I should have brought some water in with me. So the first one's around, we're working with the TRE providers on our projects. What's the maximum budget we can allocate against this line item? Is this counted against research equipment? So if it's a collaboration with a TRE provider, then that may be a collaborative project, and you may be in a position to treat them as a partner on the project, or as a perhaps an industry partner, or but just as another collaborator on the project. If it's that you are buying services from them, this would be deemed as research equipment. So it depends on whether this is a collaboration or you're purchasing equipment or services from the provider. The second one's around IP. This is about informing the future design of the DARE UK programme and collaboration. We are not looking at this as a programme where organisations will establish new foreground IP through this funding call. Therefore, the position is that foreground will be shared as open source. Okay, so we're not that this will be assigned to UKRI or as IP to UKRI, but that the fundamental principles here will be open publication and open source for any of the technology areas. That doesn't mean what you bring here as existing background IP, but anything produced here must be reusable by the future phases of the DARE UK programme, and whichever partners. We're the phase 1 delivery team. We may or may not be here delivering phase 2, but whoever delivers phase 2, phase 3 of this programme has got to be positioned to be unencumbered in delivering on what we learn from phase 1. There is no requirement for the applications to be, there's a question which is there a requirement for applications to be submitted by a consortia, or can an application be submitted by a sole organisation? Unlike those who've been around for a while, when we ran the Digital Innovation Hub sprints 3 years ago, we are not mandating a consortia here. If you wish to bring forward an application through a single organisation and institute, providing you meet the research organisation requirements of the lead institute, then you can bring forward an application as a single institute. So what I would suggest around overheads for higher education institutes, because these are slightly more complex, please go to the UKRI Opportunity Finder entry. Please read through the details as written there. And if there's an aspect that isn't clear around funding of overheads and what levels of FEC apply, please then send in a note in. I'd rather not talk it through verbally. It's much better just go and read through the details. They're well written out there. And if it's not clear, and sometimes there is nuances, please contact us and we will have one of the UKRI team who specialise in this area get back to you on it. So will the final national secure and interoperable digital research you're looking to develop include NHS databases such as those held by NHS Digital? I'm wondering if we can include reference to those in our applications. So as I said, this is not health specific, though health data is clearly one of the key areas where we do have sensitive data. And we would expect that from a research perspective, the infrastructure that's delivered, and this is a first phase, this is a requirements gathering, that would include health data in scope. So those databases, for example, that are made available under NHS digital governance for health data research, I think are exactly applicable here. So if you want to reference those, please do so. As a side, probably not the question you're asking, Jessica, but as a side point, if you're proposing to do research on, for example, those data sets, please do make sure that your application fits within the scope of the agreements that you have in place with NHS Digital or the other data custodians. We do not want anybody going outside of the ethics and the agreements that they have in place. And just a reminder that one of the things we will be looking at in the review is that you have those permissions in place, because this is a quick cycle and you're unlikely to get through an application process in the time frame needed to be ready to launch in January. Would funding be considered to improve existing technologies with the aim to bring more clinical trials in the UK, as well as the opportunity to take patients to take part in health research? So an application that purely improved bringing more clinical trials to the UK was a very laudable area to be doing work, isn't really what we're trying to aim to do with this call. What we're trying to do with this call is look across council. There are really important reasons for wanting to do the work described. So an application here would only really have strength if it was drawing in practice or public engagement approaches from outside of the health domain to support the work that might be around bringing more clinical trials to the UK. I think something that purely focused in on bringing more clinical trials to the UK and opportunity for more people to take in health research is not broad enough for what we're looking for the Dare UK call. Very, very important, very laudable, but it isn't really within scope for what we're looking for this program. So I'm going to take the next one, and then I'm going to hand somebody else to answer John's. So the next one is in relation to technology demonstrators in the area of the 5 safes principle. Would these be expected to address each of the 5 safes, or could an application focus on, say, one of the 1 to 3 of the safes? Really good question. Actually, again, back to this one of scope. An application that, for example, provided a really good approach to support perhaps automation around one of the safes could be a really strong application. I think an application that contended that you could move the dial on all 5 safes of the 5 safes principles, I think would be an incredibly ambitious and probably unachievable in this time frame. But something that did a super job of one area, and we know that some of this, for instance, automating some elements of safe outputs could be a really, really robust application. So wouldn't want to discourage you at all from just focusing in and doing a great job of just one area. So did somebody else want to take John's call around funding for PPIE in the project? Yeah.
I believe that's an allowable expense. Yeah, that should be fine to include that. That would be, of course, only one component, presumably, in a successful application. But yes, that would be an allowable expense.
So, do technology demonstrators need a research-based case study? So, in the three areas that we're looking at with the projects of technology demonstrators, use cases, and best practices, a technology demonstrator project doesn't have to be addressing the use cases necessarily, so it doesn't need to span both of those. However, if you're going to propose a technology demonstrator, there needs to be a lay description in here. And as part of that lay description, you need to be able to describe to the public what the value of doing this is. And therefore, whilst I wouldn't necessarily say to you, work out and prove a use case on top of the technology demonstrator, you are going to need to describe why doing this technology demonstrator matters, what the value that's going to bring, how that shifts things forward in terms of the overall DARE UK program and the aims of the program. So you don't necessarily have to work through all of the use cases, but you are going to need to be able to describe how a piece of technology work improves the use case, improves the governance for the program, because otherwise it's going to be a little bit abstract. So the strict answer is no, but you do need to be able to describe why you're doing that technology demonstrator. CrossCouncil. So this is about looking at an infrastructure that spans UKRI, that spans health data, that spans economic and social data, that spans the physical sciences and engineering, that spans climate data. So UKRI has funded research across data in the whole breadth of the rich research and development opportunity in the UK. This program is about looking at how we move to a more integrated approach across the sensitive data that exists there, whether that's commercially or personally sensitive data, but particularly how that's done across research areas. So we already know that there is great work done within ESRC on data within ESRC, and indeed sometimes CrossCouncil as well, and the same true of the other areas. What this program is looking at is use cases, technology, and best practices which are working across data that is in from more than one research area. So if it's purely health, or it's purely social sciences, purely a sort of arts and humanities area, this is probably not going to show value that spans the UKRI R&D world. So this is what CrossCouncil means. It means it's got to be applicable more generally in moving forward research on sensitive data than just in sort of a single narrow area.
Good. I don't see any more questions in the Q&A. I'm not sure if we should give everybody another 2 minutes in case something's come to mind in between that you want to quickly pop in. So maybe we'll give it 2 minutes, and if we have nothing in the Q&A, then we can just go to closing the call.
And what I would say is, often I find on calls like this, you walk out of the call, and then 2 minutes afterwards, you sit there thinking, oh, I know I should have asked that question. So please do send us questions. So we want to have the questions. What on the 11th of November at 9:05, I want to be sitting down with a brilliant set of applications. I want a really tough discussion and decision process to be able to get to those last 10 applications. I don't want it to be easy. I want it to be hard. I want them to be way more than we can do. So there's a rich set to go out at some point in the future. So if you've got questions, please do ask us. Please do go to the website, but please throw them in. So if you didn't ask us now, please do ask us afterwards. We want those questions. Because we want great applications.
Yeah, one more.
Good. Yeah, no. What about a sixth safe of interoperability? There's a couple of people who have already tried to add a sixth or seventh safe. If you've got something that you want to propose around safe interoperability, I would absolutely encourage you to bring that forward, because to some extent, and interoperability is one of those overused words. So when we talk about interoperability, we probably need to be a bit more specific. But at the heart of what we're trying to do here is build a federated approach to research on sensitive data across TREs that already adhere to the 5 safes model. So in a sense, the question you've just asked is exactly at the heart of what we're trying to do with the DAY UK programme, which is actually to build that sixth safe around federation and interoperability.
Okay.
So for a tech demonstrator, would Cross Research Council TRE Federation be essential, or would cross-organisational, cross-sector be sufficient? We are looking for this to be cross-council. What it could be is drawing on capability that exists from another area to demonstrate it within one of a new council area. So technology that may have come from, say, EPSRC into another domain, that would be valid. If it's just cross-sectorial within a single domain, and we know from the health domain, health is incredibly broad, so you can have quite a lot of breadth within health. It doesn't really meet what we're trying to do with this. We are trying to drive this from a cross-council perspective. You mentioned you're looking favourable on high-risk, high-return research proposals. Can you elaborate on what you mean in the context of sensitive data? Yes, so when we say risk, we're not talking about risk to the data. This is all about public trust. As I said at the beginning of the call, we have to retain and hold that trust in our hearts. When I say risk here, it's about not making your projects so contained that you know that you can do it in the time, and there's very little, you're not really stretching what we achieve. So this is about project risk, not about data risk. So what we're looking for out of these are, this is novel. We are trying to do something that's genuinely difficult here. So we're looking at projects that try new things, inform what we can do with DAY UK moving forward. So we are looking at projects that really shift what is being done, that don't just make a minor tweak to something that already 90% works, but take something that's difficult, perhaps the automation of the 5 safes, perhaps novel approaches around public involvement, and do something quite different. And by doing something quite different, there's a risk it won't work. There's a risk that you will have great learnings from it, but at the end of this, You might not have something that's exactly what you thought you were going to end up with. That's fine. So the risk we're looking for is that the projects are trying to do something novel. They're trying to do something different, and therefore they really will inform what we need to invest in the next 4 to 5 years. I think. So I'm struggling to understand the cross-council relevance. Is it about developers being data and domain agnostic? No, not necessarily. It might be about being data and domain agnostic, but it might also be, can we do something that allows us to be more effective at driving research that perhaps draws together administrative data, climate data, and health data in a way that allows us to be more efficient around our research, more efficient around our perhaps use of infrastructure. So it could be agnostic, or it could be about how we do linkage across different data areas, or how we better utilize the technology we have across those areas. So it doesn't necessarily, being cross-council doesn't actually mean it's necessarily agnostic, because the linkage of data would not be agnostic, it'd be far from agnostic, in fact.
Yes.
But equally, if something was generally applicable and a technology demonstrator that was generally applicable and agnostic to the data and domain, that again would be valid. It's not to say that's not valid. And I will take Eleanor's as the last one. Would something novel demonstrated within one council area for the sprint that could then be rolled out to other councils areas be acceptable? Yes. If you do something within one council area, social science or arts and humanities or health, and you can clearly show that the work you're doing has applicability in other council areas, then that is within scope. Absolutely within scope. Okay, with that one, I'm going to hand back to Fergus.
Yep. So I think that's it. I don't see any more questions popping in, but please, I mean, as we've sort of mentioned a few times now, if you do have questions, if you do need clarity on things, please get in touch. Again, you can find how to do that on the UKRI website, also on the Day UK website. So please do that if you have clarifications and questions. I am just, putting in the chat now again that we will be sharing the documentation and the recording of this session. And of course, we will be updating the FAQ document online as well, which will be refreshed or updated on a weekly basis. So I think with that, we're done for today. We're done with the mid-sprint call. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you all for your questions and for participating. And we're very much looking forward to receiving your applications.
Yeah, 9 o'clock on the 11th.
9 o'clock on the 11th. There we go.
Okay.
Thanks very much, everybody. Have a great day, great rest of the week.
Thank you.
Right.